From caves to skyscrapers, from camel caravans to space rockets, humanity has always had its titans, men who not only accumulated wealth, but who defined what it meant to be rich in their time. Throughout history, many names have shown as the greatest icons of wealth. In the modern era, the position of richest man in the world has been held by several powerful figures who transformed their fortunes into legacies, such as Andrew Carnegie, Amancio Ortega, Bernard Arnault, Warren Buffett, Carlos Slim, and Larry Ellison. A position that today, in 2025, is held by Elon Musk, with a fortune of $497 billion, solidifying his position as the richest man in the world. But what if we brought the greatest magnates of antiquity to the present day? How much would their fortunes be worth? And which of these legends would be richer than Musk? Welcome, noble Templar travelers. Prepare for an epic journey through history, where we will explore the most powerful kings, emperors, conquerors, and prophets who ever lived and find out if Musk would truly be the richest, or just another one among titans forgotten by time. To structure this comparison in a clear and visual way, we adopted the tier list format, categorizing each figure into precise levels. S tier, richer than Musk for fortunes exceeding $497 billion. A tier, equally rich for values close or equivalent. D tier, less rich for more modest fortunes. Job, the patriarch of the desert. More than 4,000 years ago, in the arid lands of Arabia, there were no empires or great wealth as we know them. But one man stood out among all. Job, the richest man in the East. With vast herds of camels, oxen, and sheep, immense lands, and servants who made up his personal empire, Job represented absolute power over his land. But all of this was lost in a single day, after a great trial. But Job's story does not end in tragedy. With his unwavering faith, he was rewarded with double everything he lost. According to the book of Job in the Bible, he owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 female donkeys, an empire that stretched over vast lands from which he derived his sustenance and maintained his authority. When we bring Job's wealth to modern Saudi Arabian standards, we can calculate his fortune based on the price of camels, sheep, and land in the region. Today, a common camel can be worth about $10,000, with elite camels potentially exceeding $50,000, easily reaching a total of $150 to $300 million for the 6,000 camels after the restoration. His 14,000 sheep would be valued at around $4 to $6 million. As for the lands he owned, if we consider that he had 10,000 hectares of arid land, the modern value estimate could be between $1 to $5 million. But considering fertile or irrigated land up to 20,000 hectares, adjusted by broader estimates of possessions described in biblical sources, the value could reach $10–50 million or more, incorporating the equivalent of human and natural resources. In this way, Job's restored fortune is estimated between $100 million and $250 million, representing approximately 2,000 to 5,000 times less than Musk's, depending on the exact quantity of land and the quality of the camels and livestock. Mansa Musa, the ruler of the Mali Empire. In the vast lands of West Africa, the Mali Empire flourished as one of the most powerful centers of trade and culture in the medieval world. But one man stood out among all, Mansa Musa, the ninth ruler of the empire, known as the richest man of his era and possibly of all history. With absolute control over gold and salt mines, trans-Saharan trade routes, and tributes from vast territories, Mansa Musa represented the pinnacle of economic and spiritual power, integrating material wealth with religious devotion. His pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324 marked the height of his opulence when he distributed gold in such immense quantities that it caused a temporary devaluation of the metal in regions like Egypt, demonstrating not only his fortune but also his global influence. Mansa Musa's story is not limited to accumulation. He invested in mosques, universities, and infrastructure, leaving a legacy that merges prosperity with cultural and Islamic advancements. According to historical accounts, such as those of Arab chroniclers and European maps of the time, the Mali Empire under Musa controlled more than half of the world's gold supply, with annual production estimated around 50 to 100 tons, in addition to salt extracted from mines like Tagaza, ivory, spices, and a trade network that stretched from the Sahara to the Mediterranean. An empire that extended over territories equivalent to millions of square kilometers, from which he extracted taxes and sustained his authority. When we bring Mansa Musa's wealth to modern standards, we can calculate his fortune based on the value of gold, salt, and controlled territories, adjusted for inflation and the current economic context. Today, the price of gold, per metric ton, is approximately $128 million, with variations based on global markets. If we consider the annual gold production in medieval Mali at about 50 tons, a conservative estimate from historical sources, the annual value would amount to $6.4 billion, and accumulating over decades of reign, this could total hundreds of billions. The salt trade, vital for food preservation in medieval Africa, would add significant value, with mines producing thousands of tons annually, and the modern price of industrial salt being around $50 to $100 per ton, but considering its premium value in that era, equivalent to gold by weight in some markets, this could contribute billions more when adjusted. As for territories and tributes, if we estimate control over areas equivalent to 770,000 square miles, including trade routes and cities like Timbuktu, the modern value, based on regional GDP and natural resources, could exceed $100 billion, incorporating taxes on caravans and labor. Based on this data, Mansa Musa's wealth could be estimated between $400 billion and $600 billion, depending on the exact gold production, the volume of salt, and the extent of the controlled territories. As we have just seen, this is equivalent or slightly superior to Musk's fortune. Therefore, on a comparative scale, I will classify Mansa Musa's wealth as equally rich. Cleopatra, the Queen of Egypt.
More than 2,000 years ago, Ptolemaic Egypt stood out as one of the most prosperous and strategic nations in the ancient world, controlling vital trade routes that linked the Mediterranean to Africa and Asia, with an economy driven by irrigated agriculture and international trade.
But one woman stood as the ultimate symbol of this opulence: Cleopatra, the last queen of the Ptolemaic dynasty. Known for her political intelligence, diplomatic seduction, and strategic alliances that positioned her at the center of Roman power, including relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, which not only guaranteed military protection but also expanded her economic influence. With absolute control over Egypt's vast resources, including grain plantations that fed Rome, gold mines and precious stones, busy trading ports like Alexandria, and tributes from allied territories, Cleopatra represented absolute power over a nation that was equivalent to one of the richest economies of the time, integrating material wealth with political and cultural maneuvers. Her opulence was demonstrated in extravagant luxuries, such as legendary banquets and diplomatic gifts, but her trajectory culminated in a tragic defeat at the Battle of Actium, followed by her suicide to avoid Roman humiliation, leaving a legacy that blends prosperity with mythological elements of a divine queen and feminine astuteness in historical and occult narratives about the decline of empires. According to accounts from historians like Plutarch in Parallel Lives and Dio Cassius in Roman history, Cleopatra accumulated a fortune derived from the annual grain trade, with Egypt producing millions of tons for export, exotic spices like frankincense and myrrh, precious stones from mines in the eastern desert, in addition to taxes on maritime and river trade routes, inheritances from alliances with Caesar, who granted her territories in Syria and Cyprus, and Antony, who expanded her domains to include parts of Asia Minor. When we bring Cleopatra's wealth to modern standards, we can calculate her fortune based on the value of the grain trade, spices, and controlled territories, adjusted for inflation and the current economic context. Today, the price of wheat, the main Egyptian grain, per metric ton is approximately $200 to $300, with ancient Egypt exporting an estimated 5 to 10 million metric tons annually to Rome, a conservative estimate derived from historical sources on Roman food supplies. The annual value would amount to $1 to $3 billion, and accumulating over her 21-year reign, this could total tens of billions of dollars. The trade in spices and frankincense, vital for religious rituals and perfumery, would add billions more, with annual productions of hundreds of metric tons at the modern price of $5,000 to $10,000 per ton for premium items. This would contribute $500 million to $1 billion per year, scaling into billions over time. As for territories and tributes, if we consider control over areas equivalent to 386,000 square miles, including the fertile Nile Delta and ports like Alexandria, the modern value, based on natural resources and regional GDP equivalents, could exceed $50 billion to $100 billion, incorporating taxes on populations of millions of inhabitants and labor. Based on this data, Cleopatra's wealth could be estimated between $90 billion and $135 billion, depending on the exact grain production, the volume of traded spices, and the extent of the controlled territories. Therefore, on a comparative scale, Cleopatra's wealth would be about 3 to 5 times less than Musk's fortune. I confess that this comparison surprised me. Could I be wrong in the estimations? It's obvious that I could be. In fact, comment down below if you disagree with any of these estimates, okay? Augustus Caesar, the owner of the world. In the heart of the Mediterranean, the Roman Empire expanded to become the dominant superpower of antiquity, controlling territories that spanned from Britannia to Syria and from the Rhine to the Nile, representing about 30% of the world's economy at the time in terms of production and global trade. But one man stood out as the architect of this golden age, Augustus Caesar, the first Roman emperor, originally known as Octavian, who inherited the legacy of Julius Caesar and transformed the Republic into a centralized empire, promoting the Pax Romana, a period of stability and prosperity that lasted 2 centuries. With absolute control over vast state treasuries, productive agricultural lands, precious metal mines, and tributes from conquered provinces, Augustus represented absolute power over a domain that amounted to a significant fraction of global wealth, integrating economic administration with political and religious reforms. His wealth allowed him to finance great public works, such as the Forum of Augustus and aqueducts, in addition to military legions, but his rise was marked by civil wars and strategic alliances, culminating in the victory at Actium against Mark Antony and Cleopatra, consolidating his reign as princeps, the first citizen. Augustus' story is not limited to material accumulation. He was deified after his death, leaving a legacy that blends imperial prosperity with mythological elements of divinity and the restoration of Roman order, influencing hagiographical and occult narratives about eternal leadership. According to accounts from historians like Suetonius in the Lives of the Caesars and Dio Cassius in Roman history, Augustus accumulated a personal fortune estimated at about 1/5 of the empire's annual GDP, derived from inheritances such as that of Julius Caesar, equivalent to billions in sesterces, confiscations of property during the proscriptions, and gold and silver mines in Egypt and Hispania. In addition to vast agricultural lands in Italy and the provinces, taxes on maritime trade, and a network of client kingdoms that included legacies from vassal kings, an empire that spanned territories equivalent to nearly 2 million square miles, from which he extracted revenues and maintained his authority through fiscal reforms and centralized control. Based on historical economic studies, I estimate that the annual GDP of the Roman Empire under Augustus revolved around $20 to $30 billion in current dollars, with his personal fortune representing about 20% of that total, which is $4 to $6 billion annually, accumulating over his 41-year reign to total trillions. The control over Egypt, a province rich in grain and gold, would add billions more, with annual gold production estimated at 5 to 10 tons, at the modern price of about $80 million per ton. This would contribute $400 million to $800 million per year, scaling into hundreds of billions over time. As for territories and tributes, if we consider dominion over areas equivalent to nearly 2 million square miles, including trade routes like the Appian Way and Mediterranean ports, the modern value, based on natural resources and regional GDP equivalents, could exceed $2 to $3 trillion, incorporating taxes on populations of 50 to 60 million inhabitants and slave labor. Based on this data, Augustus Caesar's wealth could be estimated between $4 trillion and $5 trillion, depending on the exact production of precious metals, the extent of the controlled territories, and the impact of the economic reforms. On a comparative scale, this is about 8 to 10 times more than Musk's fortune. And for the first time, we have someone at the top, classified as richer than Elon Musk. Croesus, the king who invented money. More than 2,500 years ago, the Kingdom of Lydia emerged as a center of economic innovation and territorial expansion, marking the beginning of the era of standardized coinage. But one man stood out among all, Croesus, the king who revolutionized trade by minting the first coins of pure gold and silver, establishing a monetary system that would influence the ancient world. With control over abundant gold mines, such as those of the Pactolus River, rich in electrum, a natural alloy of gold and silver, tributes from conquered Greek cities, and a refinery in Sardis for metal purification, Croesus represented absolute power over his land. His opulence was demonstrated through generous donations to oracles like Delphi, where he offered tons of gold and ingots and statues, symbolizing not only material wealth but also religious devotion and diplomatic influence. Croesus' story does not end in glory. After consulting the Oracle of Delphi, he faced defeat by Cyrus the Great of the Persian Empire, losing his kingdom in an ambiguous prophecy that warned of the destruction of a great empire, his own. According to accounts from historians like Herodotus, in the histories, Croesus accumulated gold from productive mines and annual tributes, with recorded donations including 117 gold ingots, each weighing about 2 talents, or 115 pounds. In addition to pure gold statues and vessels, an empire that stretched over fertile territories in western Anatolia, from which he extracted resources and maintained his authority through an army and alliances. Today, the price of gold per metric ton is approximately $80 million, with variations based on global markets. If we consider the annual gold production in Lydia under Croesus at about 5 to 10 tons, a conservative estimate derived from historical sources about the Pactolus River mines and refineries in Sardis, the annual value would amount to $400 million to $800 million, and accumulating over his 14-year reign, this could total tens of billions of dollars. The donations to Delphi, documented by Herodotus, included about 6 tons of gold, equivalent to over $480 million in today's dollars, but this represents only a fraction of his total fortune, as he controlled productive mines and received tributes from vast regions. The trade facilitated by the minted coins would add significant value, with the introduction of gold staters, each worth about $1,000 in modern equivalent per unit. Considering mass circulation and estimating millions of coins produced, this could contribute billions more when adjusted. Based on this data, Croesus' wealth could be estimated between $300 billion and $400 billion, depending on the exact gold production, the volume of minted coins, and the extent of the controlled territories. All that we have seen is still about 20 to 30% less than Musk's fortune. Even with all that quantity of gold, Croesus is still classified as less rich than Musk. Marcus Licinius Crassus, the billionaire general. In the rising Roman Republic, where political power intertwined with military and economic conquests, one man stood out as one of the most influential and opulent of his era, Marcus Licinius Crassus, the general and politician who amassed a colossal fortune through shrewd and controversial strategies, forming part of the first triumvirate alongside Julius Caesar and Pompey. With control over silver mines in Hispania and Asia Minor, real estate speculation in Rome, buying properties destroyed by fires at low prices and rebuilding them with slave labor, and an innovative army of slave firefighters that he used to monopolize firefighting in the city, Crassus represented absolute power over economic and social resources. But his ambition culminated in a disastrous campaign against the Parthians, resulting in the Battle of Carrhae, where he was defeated and executed, with his head used as a prop in a theatrical play, a tragic end that symbolized the volatility of fortune amidst political and military intrigues. According to accounts from historians like Pliny the Elder in his Natural History and Appian in the Civil Wars, Crassus possessed a fortune estimated at about 200 million sesterces, derived mainly from silver mines that produced annual tons of the metal, in addition to vast rural and urban properties, thousands of slaves, including the 500 slaves trained as firefighters, and tributes from conquered provinces, forming an economic empire that extended over Roman and allied territories, from which he extracted revenues and maintained his authority through alliances and corruption. Today, the price of silver per metric ton is approximately $1 million, with variations based on global markets. If we consider the annual silver production from his mines to be around 100 to 200 tons, a conservative estimate derived from historical sources on Roman extractions in Hispania, the annual value would amount to $100 million to $200 million, and accumulating over decades of political and military career, this could total tens of billions of dollars. His properties in Rome, including agricultural lands and reconstructed urban buildings, would be valued at billions more, with the Roman real estate market equivalent to vast areas. Adjusted for modern values in historic cities like Rome, this could contribute $50 billion to $100 billion, considering the equivalent of speculation in contemporary urban centers. As for the army of slave firefighters and other human assets, if we estimate the value of thousands of trained slaves, equivalent to specialized labor today, this would add billions more, incorporating taxes on services and monopolistic control. Based on this data, Marcus Licinius Crassus' wealth could be estimated between $200 billion and $400 billion, depending on the exact production of silver, the extent of the properties, and the impact of the provincial tributes. Therefore, Marcus Licinius Crassus' wealth would be about 20% to 60% less than Musk's fortune. Thus, he will join those who are classified as less rich than Musk. King Solomon, the King of Gold. About 3,000 years ago, a king transformed Israel into a center of wealth, trade, and international prestige. Solomon, famous not only for his wisdom, but for the opulence that marked his reign. With diplomatic alliances, strategic trade routes, and tributes from vassal kingdoms, Solomon built an economic empire that stood out among neighboring peoples. According to the Book of Kings, Solomon received 666 talents of gold per year, a number that became a symbol of his immense fortune. This corresponds to about 22 tons of gold annually, not counting the additional gold brought by fleets sent to Ophir, spice trade, Arabian caravans, and taxes from peoples like the Moabites, Edomites, and Phoenicians. Under his reign, even common palace objects were made of gold, such was the volume of wealth entering Jerusalem. In addition to gold, Solomon controlled vast agricultural properties, trade in horses and chariots with Egypt and Syria, revenues from ports and desert routes, and an administration that centralized resources from across the kingdom. The height of his opulence was the construction of the Temple of Jerusalem, rich in gold, silver, and wood from Lebanon, a monument that symbolized not only faith, but also economic power. Following his death, however, internal tensions and fiscal pressures contributed to the division of the kingdom, ending Israel's period of greatest prosperity. We can calculate Solomon's fortune based on the value of the annual gold he received, in addition to trade, tributes, and controlled lands. Today, the price of gold per metric ton is about $80 million. Thus, the 22 tons annually would be equivalent to approximately $1.7 billion per year. Over his reign of about 40 years, this gold alone would total more than $70 billion, but this represents only a fraction of his total wealth. Considering trade, tributes, and properties mentioned in biblical and historical sources, modern estimates place his fortune between $500 billion and $1 trillion, depending on the exact volume of gold brought from Ophir, the annual tributes, and the size of the productive lands. Therefore, on a comparative scale, Solomon's wealth, just as I expected, and I believe you did too, would be classified as richer than Musk. And so, we come to the end of our epic journey through the vaults of history. From Job, who was only less rich than Musk, to King Solomon and Augustus Caesar, who exceeded all expectations and proved that the power and gold of antiquity still put on a show compared to modern wealth. Comment down below which other historical tycoon, pharaoh, or emperor you would like to see in our next analysis. Colossal names like Ramses II, Nebuchadnezzar, and Alexander the Great were left out. And don't forget to like and share this video. See you on the next journey. Bye.